There was an interesting article posted in the Duluth Reader a few weeks back. Dead mine walking. Agencies empowered to protect the state's people and natural resources have instead flouted environmental laws to aid foreign mining companies. And joining us right now is the author of this article, Rob Levine. He is kind enough to take some time today to talk about that article and the research behind it, which is incredible. It's actually a very well done piece. Rob, thank you very much. I appreciate the time.
Thank you very much for having me, man. Glad to be here.
My pleasure. Now, first of all, I want to talk. It seems like a long time ago, for quite a while, you have been doing mapping, taking photos of areas in northern Minnesota that would kind of be what kind of prompted you to start documenting these areas, because you've done more than I've seen anyone else do in regards to saying, okay, this is one area we don't want to destroy. Oh, here's another area we don't want to destroy, and here's how it would be destroyed if we did this. How did you get started on that element of it?
Well, thank you very much. I have a career as a photojournalist, and I bought my first drone in 2016. And I was looking for ways to use it to, do news and to maybe aid the environmental movement. And so I started looking around to shoot drone pictures of areas for where these sulfide mines are proposed to be built in northeastern Minnesota. But I quickly found that it would be very difficult, particularly in the case of the mine that I wrote about here, Polymet, very difficult to get drone pictures of the actual area where the mine would be. And that's because the rules and laws surrounding drone use in the United States, the prime directive is you have to keep the drone within your visual line of sight. So that means that in order to shoot something, you really have to get kind of close to it. And it turns out that in this case of the proposed Polymet sulfide mine, which would be built between Hoyt Lakes and Babbitt, Minnesota, in northeastern Minnesota, that all of the land surrounding the proposed mine is owned by the mining companies. So it'd be very difficult to get close enough to that area to shoot pictures of this beautiful landscape, really, where they plan to build this mine, digging an open pit mine 700 feet deep in this particular case. And so it kind of struck me that the journalism and photography surrounding these proposed sulfide mines is particularly Polymet. The picture that they would always use was of an old plant that they planned to reuse, and it sort of underplayed the stakes of what was happening in the area. Because if you have a picture of an old rusted sulfide mine, that doesn't really get to the idea of this beautiful land that they want to bulldoze and build these holes in. And so I decided instead to try and shoot drone pictures of the waters that would be threatened by these proposed mines, either by the day-to-day operations, accidents, or even accumulated problems with it. And so starting in about 2018, I started driving up to northeast Minnesota to try and shoot drone pictures of the areas surrounding the proposed mine rather than the area of the mine itself.
Let's just step back and describe what one of these mines would look like. You kind of have done that a little bit here, but it's a multi-site process here, because it's the mine itself, it's a holding area, and then it's an area for basically processing the whatever they're pulling out of the ground, correct?
Oh, exactly. Yes. So you have the mine site itself, right, which isn't a very big area, that they want to basically dig down 700 feet or so, blow up the granite, ancient granite, billion to 200-year-old granite, and then load it up into train cars and ship it 6 miles away to this existing plant that was used to make taconite pellets many years ago. And next door to this plant where they would process this ore is the so-called flotation tailings basin. And that's the place where they take all of the crud that's not the minerals that they want, and they dump it into this pond, essentially. It's called a tailings basin, but it's not really a basin. It's more like a mound because it's built above the ground, okay? And so this tailings basin was originally built for the iron mining that was done there. And iron mining tailings aren't nearly as dangerous as sulfide mining tailings, because sulfide mining tailings contain a lot of sulfur.
Mm-hmm.
And if water contacts that, it creates sulfuric acid, and it leaches all kinds of heavy metals, neurotoxins, and so forth. And Minnesota law says that when you close a sulfide mine, that you have to make it so water never traverses these sulfide tailings in perpetuity. So you have the mine, you have the tailing, you have the plant, and then you have the tailings basin right next to the plant. And my story is basically about this tailings basin.
This has never been done environmentally safe, has it?
No, no. Sulfide mining like this has never been done in a wet area like northeastern Minnesota. And as a matter of fact, Jennifer McEwen, representative from Duluth, has proposed legislation called Prove It First. And she's tried to get a hearing of it in the last couple of years, but unsuccessfully, even though the Democrats are in control. But this law that they're proposing called Prove It First, it was actually enforced in Wisconsin about a decade ago until Scott Walker took over and they repealed it. But basically, Prove It First says that no sulfide mine could be built in northeastern Minnesota where it's super wet and super environmentally sensitive until a mine like that had been built somewhere else in a similar area and been operating for 10 years. So this Prove It First legislation, which has never gotten a hearing in Minnesota, would essentially put a moratorium on sulfide mines for 20 years.
There was an old dog and pony show here that seems to have gone by the wayside, thank God, that they would put out, it's polymet. It's like a ma and pa mine. We're just trying to be miners. And what it was hiding was the fact that this is a mine, and you go into detail on this in your story, that this is not a ma and pa organization. This is Glencore out of Switzerland. It's Tech Resources out of Canada. And the reality is those two companies do not give a rat's caboose about the environmental stability of northern Minnesota. They just want the minerals out of the ground, correct?
No, it's totally true, especially with Glencore is just a horrible environmental criminal across the globe. And they masked their ownership for a very long time of this mine. But finally, last November, they took their 100% stake in Polymet. And then they took their 100% stake in Polymet and they merged with Tech to make a new company called New Range, which owns the Polymet mine. So the Polymet mine, or NorthMet, as it's called both by the courts, but the NorthMet project that I wrote about now is 50% owned by Glencore and 50% owned by Tech.
Yeah, the Swiss have never done anything abhorrent. Anyway, I'll just skip on past that for a second here. Anyway, so you have this. It is, as you described. I mean, we have laws in the books here. I mean, this is a non-starter. It's supposed to be a non-starter, but then we get into the complexities of the DNR and, frankly, the complexities of the DFL, because, and let's start with the DFL. Clearly that the two Democratic governors that we've had here don't want to upset the pro-mining DFLers of the Iron Range. But at the same time, they're not doing what they probably should be doing, which is saying, hey, we're for taconite mining. That's no problem. This type of mining will wipe out northern Minnesota. We can't risk that.
Yeah, they don't. How do you say that? The Polymet mine itself is not really a very economically positive mine, right? Mm-hmm. And for instance, the ore that they dig at the bottom is like 99.7% waste. And so what happened is that in 2010, your listeners will remember that the Democrats and the Republicans in Minnesota were very closely matched. And Mark Dayton only won the governorship by like 9,000 votes. And so, agree with him or not, he was foursquare behind the mining, and he really tried to get this sulfide mine going. And he obviously gave marching orders to the head of the DNR at the time, Tom Landwehr, and the head of the MPCA at the time to do what they could to get this mine operating no matter what. And so, for instance, the first thing that really had to happen was the DNR had to write an environmental impact statement for the mine before anything else could happen, right? So the first environmental impact statement was issued in 2009 by the DNR. It's called the Draft Environmental Impact Statement, right? And this environmental impact statement then had to pass muster with the National Environmental Protection Agency, the EPA, right? The DNR's environmental impact statement had to be accepted by the EPA. But what happened was in 2010, the EPA evaluated this draft environmental impact statement and gave it its lowest, worst rating, okay? So the DNR had tried to pass off this draft environmental impact statement with a bunch of problems, and the EPA came back and said, no, this environmental impact statement cannot pass. And so the DNR went back to the drawing board, and 4 years later, they issued a supplemental draft environmental impact statement that was over 2,000 pages, right? But the thing about it is that Minnesota law requires that for non-ferrous mining, which is this non-iron mining, the sulfide mine, right, has to have, and all mines actually, have to have a term that says, after you're done mining, how long will it take you to clean up your mess, right?
Yeah.
And so for the early documents for the Polymet mine, the DNR had put in time periods of 100 and 200 years to clean up the mess left by Polymet. But by the time the permit to mine was issued by the DNR, they had not specified any time period for the cleanup of their mess, right? But in the meantime, emails and documents had been leaked from the DNR from their own consultants and their own dam specialists, which said that the cleanup period for this mine could be 900 years or longer.
Well, because no one's ever tried to clean it up, the mess that's made. I mean, it's kind of one of those things. And the reality is that, let's be honest, Glencore and the other company, the Canadian company, they have no intention of cleaning this up. That this is the way that they do it is they buy off, and I'll be political. You're not being. I'll be political. They buy off Republican politicians like Pete Stauber up there, say basically allow us to do this without any consequences, and then they say, well, it's going to be clean, and then when it fails miserably, then they say, well, I guess the taxpayers have to cover the cost of it. The problem here is as you described it, is even if the taxpayers are covering this is such a toxic mess that it's not, even if we sent in everything we got, it still is going to be, I don't even know what a speedy cleanup of something like this would even look like.
Right, and the stakes couldn't be higher. I mean, we're talking about, like I write in my story, that this dam, if it fails, 2 billion gallons of toxic waste could flow into these pristine rivers around there. But the truth is, I was working this out, and it could be actually 200 billion gallons. It's just an enormous amount of tainted water that could flow if this dam. And the thing about this dam is, and I get into this in the story, is that there are different kinds of tailings dams or tailings basins, if you will, that mining companies use to hold their waste in. But the type of dam that exists now that they want to reuse is called an upstream dam. And you can look at the pictures on my website, but it's basically, as they build up the walls higher and higher, but they build them up to the inside of the dam so that the increased height of the walls is all built sort of teeter-tottering on the lower levels of the dam. And scientists have been studying these dams for many decades now, and they're not safe.
Nope.
And many jurisdictions don't even allow these dams anymore. There have been catastrophic failures of these dams over the past decade. So there's just so much wrong with this.
Well, and yeah, Lord knows we know dams don't always work. I mean, you can get consequential rains and it becomes a bigger problem. Dayton seemed to have an epiphany. He, later in his term, did go and tour some of these sites, came to realize, these can't ever get cleaned up, and came out with I don't want to say an endorsement or a complete rejection, but he definitely was on the, no, we probably shouldn't do this. That gets us to Walls. Walls put through Line 3. A lot of people, including myself, were against that, and were proven right when the company punched holes in the bottom of the Mississippi River on their building it. He has once again started playing this dance with the Democrats of the Iron Range that keep, for some reason, pushing this, and I'll get to that at the end here, but they keep pushing this. Where is it now? I mean, where is the DNR right now? I mean, is there still this blind allegiance to try to get this mine improved in some capacity?
In short, yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yes, absolutely. This project in 2018, early 2019, had collected all the major permits that it needed to operate. It had the wetlands destruction permit from the Army Corps of Engineers. It had the water pollution permit from the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency, and it had the permit to mine from the Minnesota DNR. But months later, environmental organizations Water Legacy and the Minnesota Center for Environmental Advocacy had filed suit for contested case hearings. And before long, the summer of 2019, the fall of 2019, first, the water pollution permit was overturned by the Minnesota Appeals Court. And then later in the year, the permit to mine was overturned by the Minnesota Appeals Court. So as I say in my story, anytime this project has had to face a judge and people have to testify under oath, the permits have been overturned. So in 2019, 2020, the Minnesota State Appeals Court overturned the permit to mine, and they cited 10 issues with this polymet mine that they said deserve what are called contested case hearings. And contested case hearings are basically hearings before an administrative judge to get to find the truth about certain things. So the appeal court had ordered a contested case hearing on these 10 issues, but the DNR has had their thumb on the scale for this entire project. And so after the appeals court said you have to have a contested case hearing, of course the DNR allied with Polymet appealed that appeals court decision to the Minnesota State Supreme Court. And the State Supreme Court agreed to hear that case. And the State Supreme Court heard that case in 2021. And they issued a decision which reversed most of the appeals court decision, but still held that there were two important issues that deserved contested case hearings. So finally, last year in the spring, there was a contested case hearing in front of an administrative law judge in Minnesota about the Polymet case, specifically about the tailings basin and water contacting the sulfide tailings. So then in November of 2023, the administrative law judge made his decision, which are technically not law. They're technically recommendations to the commissioner of the DNR, but the commissioner can't really, he could stay it. But anyways, the administrative law judge recommended that the DNR reject this permit to mine, specifically because their plan did not stop water from traversing these sulfur tailings, right? Mm-hmm. And so now the Minnesota DNR has to react to this decision by the administrative law judge, right? And so behind the scenes now, they're all arguing about how to deal with these decisions from the administrative law judge and the Minnesota Supreme Court. But it turns out that in these proceedings in front of the administrative law judge and the Supreme Court, the commissioner of the DNR took the side of Polymet.
Okay.
And so they're still, they still got their thumb on the scale, even though, and what I say, what I conclude in my piece is that this administrative law judge, in striking down the polymet permit to mine, said that in the testimony that he had taken 300 million gallons of water a year will traverse these sulfide mine tailings and create all kinds of environmental problems. Now, Polymet says that they're going to take this polluted water from the bottom of the basin and they're going to pump it back into the top of the basin, but they won't say for how long. 900 years, 1,000 years. I mean, nobody knows.
It's just not an option thing. So, final question for you here: how many total jobs? What's the total jobs that Polymet would create? What's the total, off the top of your head? You know, off the top of your head?
I don't know, but it's not a lot, and it's not even close to like the number of jobs for like solar installers.
Well, I'll do it even one better here. The last number I checked was there's 125,000 tourism-based jobs in the Arrowhead region alone of the state. 125,000. This mine is what, a few hundred jobs?
Yeah, for 20 years.
Yeah,
for 20 years, and for pollution that will last millennia.
And so what in the hell, what kind of math is it? What kind of idiot thinks 125,000 tourism jobs being on the line is worth 200 mining jobs and 900 years of pollution? That's the question which that they don't want to answer. Is the fact is that you're jeopardizing every economic job up there outside of 200 mining jobs for one mine, and that is just insanity.
It seems like a weird miscalculation, doesn't it?
It does. You would see that would be your, oh, well, that's a non-starter. I guess we're done here. Thank you very much, Polymet. Have a nice day in Switzerland. But that would be the end of it. All right. We've already talked a long time here, but I do want people to go over and read this story. The Duluth Reader has it. It's from June 20th. I will link to that a little bit later on. And so if you look up on the social medias, you can find it there. An excellent piece. Rob Levine. Rob, thank you very much. I really appreciate the information and taking the time with us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
My pleasure. Well, let's take a break. Come on back. It's the Matt McNeil Show here on your Friday.